Marcus C. Williams here, and thank you for watching The Divide today. So, we've got a great show for you, and we're going to get started. You know, we were going to be broadcasting on the radio today too, but that didn't end up working out the way that we wanted it to for the first part of the new year. But I mean, hey, everything's not able to go exactly the way that you want it to all the time. You have to make the movements and the adjustments as things change so that you can actually continue to move forward. So let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to talk about it being a new year. It is a great new year. It is 2024. You know, over the last couple of years, we've seen so much go on. We've seen so much pain. We've seen so much bad policy. We've seen so much craziness. And now here we are moving into a new year. So, with that being said, what can we do to create a better year moving forward? How can we move forward given that we have a lot of people in the political realm that are doing things that are disadvantaging our actual country, our nation, and the interests of the American people? That's something that we need to be able to have the ability to talk about, but not just talk about it. We have to be able to put solutions forth to actually solve these different issues that we're experiencing. More than that, we also need to be able to make sure that we ourselves are actively taking part in being part of the solution. No longer are there the days where you could just sit idly on the sideline and assume that politics won't impact you. No longer are there the days where you can just say, oh, well, politics doesn't affect me. Listen, everything is politics, and that's something that we have to remember. It's very, very important. If we don't remember that everything is politics, we start to lose pieces, not just of ourselves, but of our society as a whole. We look at what's happened in the educational system. We've lost a lot there. You know, the educational quality is no longer in most school systems. I myself live in Rochester, New York. We've got the Rochester, New York School District, so the RCSD, and that's a problem. So with that being said, we need to be the people that are going to be the actual people to put solutions in to actually stand up and be the change that we want to see. Now, we also have economic issues that have all been, again, brought on by policy. And these policies are, again, coming from elected officials. If you don't like your rates on gas, if you think that there's a problem with those rates on gas, then who's the issue? You look at the issue, you say, okay, well, that's elected officials. You say, okay, well, which level of government is it the elected officials on? If you say, okay, well, I don't like the taxes that are happening, you say, okay, well, which level of government are those taxes being applied on? You say, well, my housing assessment, I don't really like that. You say, okay, well, what level of government is it that is addressing that? Politics affects you when you go to the supermarket. You go, you buy, you look at how much the price of milk costs or how much a dozen eggs are, and you're like, wow, this is bananas. Things have gone out of control, and people are like, oh, well, it's not that bad. Well, the question is not that bad to who, and who makes that deliberation, you know? So we see, as America continues down the path that we're going in, largely, we've got elected officials on the federal level that seem to have all the concerns in the world, but many of them don't have the concerns of the American people at top of mind. Much of the things that we see surround foreign policy. Foreign policy is a very big issue right now, especially aid to foreign countries. Now, I can sit here and list all the billions of dollars that we give to all types of countries. Like, we give $1.1 billion to Somalia in food aid. Allegedly, we give $1 billion to the Democratic Republic of Congo in food aid, and these are very war-torn countries. If you know anything about them, we give like $10 billion to the Israel a year, and these are not real numbers, right? Like these are the low numbers, the numbers that they like to report. We often give these countries much more money than that. Also, the money that goes to Israel is largely in the form of defense aid. Or you take the issue of Ukraine. We've given them over $500 billion. We're something like almost $800 billion, and largely that's allegedly in military armaments and stuff like that. But the fact is it's a ton of money. But they'll only say it's only $50 billion that we've given them. But how is it always only $50 billion when you had a $10 billion here, you had $100 billion there, this billion, that billion, these million over here, a couple more million around the back. Now, all of these monies can be going to the American people, but they're not going to the American people. We've got a massive homeless crisis throughout our nation. We've got the crisis of mental illness, which everybody likes to talk about, but I still haven't heard one person say, let's open back up the state hospitals. Why is nobody saying, let's open back up the state hospitals? I live in New York State. New York State is flush with the criminally insane and the drug-addled insane. Okay, we've got crazy people out here taking a dump right in your mailbox, and you're like, Marcus, that's funny. That's hyperbole. It's not. It's not, And again, this is largely because we've got a very serious homeless crisis. We've got the drug crisis, which ties in with the homeless crisis. And again, nobody's talking about these things, but we send this foreign aid to all of these foreign countries, but we are not able to talk about it. If you start talking about it, people will say, oh, well, that's bad. That's not nice. You shouldn't say this. You shouldn't say that. Blase, blah, boom, 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 boom. Who gets to decide these things? Who are the people that are telling you that you can't talk about these things? Why shouldn't our priorities as Americans be America first? If your house and your neighbor's house is on fire, do you go and run over and put your neighbor's house out before you actually put your house out? When you get on a plane, they do the safety. You can see, think of when you get on a plane, if you've ever been on a plane. You get on the plane, you put your luggage away, you find your seat, you sit down, you can see yourself sitting on the plane, you try to look to the side and look out the window, see what's going on out there, and then you get a stewardess up at the front, and they're like, okay, everybody, up here, pay attention to me. And they pull out this instruction booklet. They say, yes, here is the instruction manual for emergency procedures. There should be one located right behind your seat. And you look and you pull out yours, or you don't pull out yours if you ride the plane a lot. But they say, okay, open it up. And one of the most important things that they say is, well, if there is a sudden loss of pressure in the cabin, air masks will fall down from the cabin ceiling. Make sure that you put yours on tightly and breathe in deep before you secure your child's mask or help anyone else. That's what they say when you get on the plane, because they know that you need to be in a situation where you are secure before you start worrying about other people. Unfortunately, the priorities of our nation on the federal level right now seem to be the prioritization of everyone else except the American people. You think we're having food price increases out of the world, they'd say, oh, well, let us do something about these tariffs and stuff that we have on fertilizer, or some of these overbearing regulations that we've been putting on farmers, making it difficult for small farms and shutting down small farms and things like that. Or you'd say, oh, well, maybe they'd actually care about farmers and enabling them to actually produce the produce and meat that they make without continually having to dispose of it, and they can actually bring it to market. Because that's a whole nother thing. We have a lot of waste in this country because of the way that our agricultural priorities on the federal level go. But nobody wants to talk about that, which is a whole separate conversation. I could do a whole episode on that, a series even. Okay, maybe you've seen them sometimes say, oh, we have to dump these many gallons of milk every month or whatever the case is. Why? Why? You've got people that are farmers that are paid not to farm. Why? Why? When there are struggling, hungry people and the costs of food continue to rise, it seems as though if that is a thing and you do want them not to produce that or to not bring that to market, that there should be some actual way that people can all be able to have at it. What do they say now is the word, flash word? Equitable access to food that's affordable. You know, these are real serious conversations that we need to be having, but we're not having them as a nation. And again, this is just a federal level of government. I didn't even start talking about the local level of government. But we're sending all of this aid across the world, to Europe, to the UN, don't get me started on the UN, to NATO, don't get me started on NATO. All of those could be series all on their own. Okay, we shouldn't be funding any of these things. People say, oh, well, Marcus, we need to fund them. Why? Why? The UN hasn't done the US right since it was the, what was it before that? Oh my goodness, I can't, I'm having difficulty recalling what the UN was before it was the UN. It was the, I don't remember, but anyway, but whatever it was before it was called the UN. And that's the last time, I think it was the League of Nations. League of Nations, that's what it was. It was the League of Nations previously. It hasn't served us well since it was the League of Nations. You know, and this is a very serious issue. We can't talk about how much money we're giving to the UN, even though the UN openly says they've got their own special agendas of world unification and making it so that you can't drive or anything like that, and you're limited and you can't have, like, one of the stated parts of the agenda of the United Nations is complete disarmament of the public, of the individual, and that's completely of your Second Amendment rights. They're trying to completely get rid of your Second Amendment rights. Why are we funding an organization like that? But that's a whole nother separate conversation. Again, though, it goes back to the priorities of our federal government versus what the actual people need and what the people are looking for. Then we go into things that we have stuff like, oh, I don't know, infrastructure expenditures on the federal level. Where is the infrastructure money? We've put over, what was it? This is something like $10 billion into charging infrastructure for the infrastructure package, and all the money that's been billed out so far, there's only been one charger made. Like, what the heck is going on? And I use that as an example to bring into the conversation state level policies, like New York State, where I live. There's this new state, I don't even know what you call it. I guess you say law. It is a law. They have to sign it to make it a thing. So it is a law. But there's this new program that they're putting in place to, allegedly, it's for investigating Black, Indigenous, and people of color that are disappearing in New York State. But that's not true. That's not true at all. What it actually is it's a bill for a 2-year period that creates an organizational task force to have conversations about possible solutions about the missing people. What the flying monkeys, uncles? Are we being serious and real with ourselves right now? Are we really, really being real with ourselves? It's a 2-year period to create a task force to talk about what we might have as far as solutions for finding missing children, in the whole time that 2 years more people are going missing. Why are y'all playing in my face? Y'all out here letting them play in your face. Don't let the government play in your face like this. They need to be held accountable. If this is a thing that's supposed to be looking out for missing children, then send them to go freaking take the state police and the what to call them, the not the Department of Justice, because that's more on the federal level, but the state level Justice Department. And we got one of those too, you know, Letitia James and all that nonsense. But put them together and have them go look for the missing kids, right? Like, what do you need? Suggestions. Stop the human traffickers. What do you mean suggestions? Do we not know that children are going missing crazy? Do we not know that young adults are going missing crazy? Especially black people. And people say, oh, well, Marcus, what about all the children? Yeah, all the children, but largely the black children, because for generations, they've been completely unacknowledged as going missing. There was this lady, I want to say, I don't know, maybe it was Indiana or somewhere else. You guys can correct me in the comments where it was. It's not a real important thing, but the conversation is that it happened. There was this, they put together this alert. They're calling it an ebony alert. So that when a black child goes missing, there's an alert specifically for that. Because they have Amber Alerts, but Amber Alerts never really seem to go off for missing black children. And that's a fact, Jack. I don't care what you try to say or try to talk back. That is a whole truth. And if we don't acknowledge that that is a truth, we as a collective whole have a very serious issue. But people, when they start talking about race, get all in their feelings if it doesn't include their race. Oh, it's not about me. Oh, it can't be happening. So this is a very serious problem, which is honestly a whole nother conversation for another day. But we need to talk about these things because it's a real thing. And I get mad because in Washington, D.C., right? So I'm a young black male. I'm seeking a spouse. I want a spouse, right? So I'm a young, black, more so conservative, traditional-minded, goal-oriented individual, right? So that means that I need to find a female that aligns with my values. However, in Washington, D.C., tens of thousands of black females go missing every single year. Tens of thousands go missing every single year, black females. And I feel some type of way personally, you know. I don't think that you should be stealing people at all, but I feel some way personally because it's hard enough to find a good woman as it is. And if I'm trying to find somebody that looks like me, you're taking down even more of the numbers. And that's a very serious problem for me. And it's crazy because people don't want to talk about it because it's a drastic issue. And nobody will talk about it. Nobody will talk about it. It's crazy. Thousands of kids go missing in the United States every year, right? Boom. End of statement. In the last year, with the illegal immigration, the Department of Homeland Security has lost 87,000 children. Let me say that again. These are just illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, excuse me. 87,000 missing children that are illegal immigrants. That doesn't even include the people inside our country and the children inside our country that are going missing. Lord have mercy. And you'll say, well, what's going on with those people? Why are so many people missing? Sex trafficking and organ harvesting. That's what it is. Very largely. Sex trafficking and organ harvesting. But we don't want to talk about that. You know, we've got movies like The Sound of Freedom, which is available on Prime now. So go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. The Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom. I was going to say Song of Freedom. That's a different thing. Sound of Freedom. It's a really, really great, powerful movie about human trafficking. But it's talking about human trafficking in the South America area, not in actual United States of America, which they could make movies about that. It's terrible. It's terrible. And the children, they go missing, thousands upon thousands, every year in the U.S. citizens, and we don't talk about it. But like I was saying, largely, vast majority of them are black children. The secondary number is American Indian children, but we can't talk about that either because that's a whole nother conversation that you can't talk about. So we do need things specifically to look into issues in relation to that. Donald Trump actually did that. Donald Trump issued a, what do you call it? Edict, memo. There's a better word for it than I'm not able to pull out of my head at this very second. But he issued an order to the Department of Justice to go look into all of the missing American Indian people in Alaska and to do more about child trafficking all throughout America. And they did. And it was a big to-do, and people act like it never happened because, you can't say anything positive about Trump ever. But Trump actually did something. He didn't actually set up a task force to have a conversation about possibly creating suggestions to maybe 2 years later present these suggestions to maybe stop children from the future, not in those 2 years period, of going missing. This is how they play in your face on the New York State level. But we can't actually talk about that because nobody is willing to actually talk about it. Because when you do talk about it, people get offended. And that's a very serious problem. And people shouldn't be getting offended when we're talking about real stuff. We need to talk about these real things in America. And when we don't, or when somebody feels some type of way because, it might be regarding race or anything like that, or whatever the case is, blah, 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 people get very frustrated if it isn't them, right? Like if we don't say, it should include white people, people get mad. People get mad. But people shouldn't get mad because it's the start of a conversation that we really need to have. Honestly, we have other bills that are, and I'm not going to beat that horse right there too much longer, but we've got other bills in the state that, again, don't do anything. And they say that they do, but they don't really actually do anything. They look good, they sound good, but they don't actually do anything. They're not actually impactful. We've got all this legislation surrounding green stuff in New York State and things like that, and other stuff, and it's really, really, really concerning. It's really concerning because we see a lot of this green money just disappear and evaporate into the stratosphere. I saw, what's her name, the governor, the High Priestess Kathy Hochul, the other day, just last night. She was like, well, we need to, what we've done so far is we've made it so that there's more offshore wind in New York State. Nobody asked you for that, bro. Nobody asked you for that. The majority of New Yorkers do not want offshore wind. Do you know how much damage that does to the marine biology and marine ecology that's going on there? And then you talk about you care about the environment. Do you know what that does to the actual circulation of the water in lakes and in the ocean when it comes to environmental and temperature, I guess you shouldn't say temperature, but weather patterns in relation to the currents of the ocean and the lakes? Like, why is this not part of the conversation? I saw we've got some solar stuff up here for the water authority, right? Where I am in Monroe County. And it's like this month, the month of December, we made like 2.3% of the electric capacity that out of 100% that we could make with the solar panels. The month before that, it was like 2-point-something% for November. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like these solar and wind is not doing it. But in New York State, you've pushed to close natural gas pipelines. Okay, you've pushed to close and shut down nuclear plants, while our prices for all of our energy uses are going up sky high. They're talking about they're about to go up again. I was reading an article the other day. They're saying that the prices they listed like the prices in states where energy prices were becoming unreasonable. New York is up in the top as usual of everything. That's not good. It's these policies, and we have to focus on what's going on. Now, if you like the shows and stuff that I do and appreciate the work that I do in the community and help me out and enable me to do more, I encourage you to go to givesendgo.com/MCW and give a little bit of a donation, or you can go on Cash App and you can do a donation there, $real MW1. Okay, so those are two ways you can donate if you'd like to assist me in continuing with programming and actual operations out in the community and doing stuff and pushing the message out that we need to get more involved and that we need to be able to actually encourage more people to take part in what needs to be done to change our country for the better. So again, you can go to givesendgo.com/MCW and you can donate there, or you can go donate on Cash App, $, and what's it? MW Real 1. That's it, MW Real 1. Excuse me, but this stuff is so sickening, it makes me want to spit. The way that our country is doing us, the way that our government is doing us, everything is so crazy right now. Our state continues to play in our face, and nobody is doing anything about it. We have, what would you say, a supermajority of Democrats in the state house, and they also have the governorship, okay? So Republicans don't have really any say in it. Conservatives don't have any say in anything, pretty much. And independents have no say in pretty much anything. These are facts. So if you see policies that are impacting you when you live in New York State, largely that's because of Democrat policies. They have the supermajority. They can do whatever they want. But the fact of the matter is that what they want and the policies that they're putting in are generally counter to what the majority of the population need. If you even go so far just to look at the things that they're doing for, they say that they care about schools and education, but education quality is getting worse, and they're teaching kids at school that boys don't have to be boys and girls don't have to be girls, and that you should be able to be a cat or a dog if you want to. And you'll say, well, Marcus, that's like not real. That's not happening. It is happening. It is happening right here in Monroe County where I live. Okay, it is happening. And if I find one more person that tells me that they identify as a bird or a cat or a dog or something, I'm going to start testing these people. I'm going to start carrying a pocket of bird food and just, oh, you're a bird, are you? Have some bird seed. You know, oh, you're a dog. Well, I've got a can of puppy chow. I want to see how far these crazy people take this stuff. How committed are you to this role? Because really it's mental illness and it's being pushed through our schools. But again, we don't want to talk about actually addressing these very serious issues. You know, it used to be gender dysphoria. Now what do you call it? Identity dysmorphia? Like, what do you even call somebody that's a human that thinks that they're a cat? What do you do with that? What is it? That's a mental illness. And they talk about, and the Democrats, and for the love of the Lord, the Democrats talk about this all the time. They're like, oh, mental health, mental health, mental health. But you're putting in policies that are encouraging the deterioration of mental health. Somebody please make it make sense to me. You're creating the problem, exacerbating the problem, and then saying that you want to talk about the problem. Not even do anything about the problem, just talk about it. That is a very, 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 very serious issue. Very serious issue. And I've never heard any of them talk about on the state level that they want to open back up the mental institutions. And I'm all for opening up the mental institutions that they used to have. I thought that it was a bad idea for them to shut them down to begin with, even though I wasn't alive when they made that decision. You know, that was like I think they closed them down in the early 80s, late 70s. They closed the last of them down. That's where you had a lot of the homeless people that ended up on the street in New York State in the early 90s and stuff like that. So, which is a whole nother conversation. We know that when those places closed down, it increased the homeless population drastically. Duh. Like, come on now. Like, this is just reality. We have this information. We know this information is real. We know the fact that more people, as they become homeless, are more likely to go to addictive substances like drugs, like alcohol, and things like that. And those behaviors, taking on those different, what you would say, substance abuse things, okay, then transition into even worse physical behaviors like acting erratic, stealing, bothering people, putting your hands on people, stuff like that. Assault, all types of stuff. But we're not able to have that real conversation. Why are we not able to have that real conversation? This all goes back to Democrat policy. Now the housing prices are all crazy astronomical because they're pushing for increased minimum wage. And now you'll say, well, Marcus, but people need more increased minimum wage. So here's the deal. And there could be a whole series or a whole episode on minimum wage alone. But I'm going to keep it very, very, very simple and impactful. So follow me. If you think that minimum wage is an issue because people are not able to afford things, you have to look into the reason why people are not able to afford things. It's not that they do not have the money, it's that the value of the dollar that they have is less than what it has been traditionally. I know many of you guys have seen online the thing with Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone for Christmas, what he bought in 1990 versus the cost now, and it's almost up 270 something percent as far as cost goes or something like that, which honestly I don't think that they did the math right. I think that it's considerably more than that. But that just shows you a 200 and something percent devaluation of the dollar bill. If you look at the dollar and there's 100 pennies in a dollar, if there is a 200% decrease in the value of your dollar, that means that if you had a dollar in the 90s and it decreased 200% in value, your dollar buying power is roughly less than half a cent. Not a percent, half a penny. You know, and if you look at other metrics and stuff like that, you see that they say that, oh, well, since the Great Depression till now, it's gone down from the value of a dollar being a dollar to it being like a nickel. You know what I'm saying? And it really depends on how you're calculating these things and stuff like that. But the one thing that's assured is that the dollar value per dollar is way less. You'll know people that many of you guys can remember when you could get a McDonald's whole meal for $10. Now it's like $20 for one person at McDonald's. It's out of control. Okay? Many people, like I was watching, sometimes they do the little videos of old stuff that happened before, and they were doing like a McDonald's, no, matter of fact, it was a Ponderosa commercial, the Ponderosa Pondo combo. Anyway, y'all know about Ponderosa. Maybe you do. Some places Ponderosa is still around. But Ponderosa commercial from the 80s or whatever, and it was like, you can get a whole meal for like $2.22. You could eat a meal for $2.22 in the 80s. $2.22. It's $20. You go out to eat right now, $20. Easy. $2.22. I don't know how to reconcile that, right? Like $2 and I could, if I had $2.22, I can actually eat real food, like have a real meal. And that goes to show you how far our dollar has depreciated. It really does. And we need to have that conversation, but they're out here talking about, let's increase minimum wage. Well, let me explain to you what happens with that while the value of our dollar falls. We've just explained how the value of the dollar continues to fall. Now, the dollar of the value is no longer tied to the gold standard or the silver certificate like it used to be I want to say, the 70s. I think that's when it finally forever got taken off, because they took the Federal Reserve off of it, which the Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's a banking cartel. They are a private organization. They are not part of the federal government. They do whatever they want, and they ramrod us every which way but right. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that the Federal Reserve is continuing cheating us as American citizens over and over and over again. The government wants more money. They ask the Federal Reserve to loan them money that the Federal Reserve then tells the U.S. Treasury, which is a federal entity, to print the money to give to the Federal Reserve so they can loan it back to the government. Somebody make that make sense to me. If the U.S. government is printing the money, why would they give it to a third-party entity to loan it back to themselves? Somebody make that make sense. But y'all out here talking about, oh, we got to increase minimum wage. If you want to talk about increasing minimum wage, if you want to talk about people in poverty, I don't want to hear nothing out of your mouth unless you're talking about ending the Fed. Ending the Federal Reserve is all I want to hear out your mouth if you got the nerve to talk about increasing minimum wage, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when you increase minimum wage, again, the dollar is not pegged to anything. It is fiat currency. It's no longer on the silver or the gold standard. So when that happens, when you increase the circulation of money in the market, then that devalues each dollar. So for every dollar we print, your dollar is worth that much less. Okay? So now I don't even know what minimum wage is going up to this year in New York State. Like $20 an hour or something now. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And people say, oh, well, Marcus, you can't say that. That's not nice. People need more money. No, they do not need more money. They need money that's worth more. Duh. Simple. Money needs to be worth more. Hello? That's it. Period. And to do that, you have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. But the people that are playing in your face and talking about they care about those in poverty, they care about those in the working class, they care about unions, are all playing you for a freaking fool. Because if they do not say that they want to end the Federal Reserve, we don't have any type of a conversation, because they don't actually care about what your buying power of your dollar is. They just want to pump more money into circulation, therefore devaluing your dollar, making life more of a struggle and more hectic for you. Bing, bang, boom. That's it in a nutshell. If these people complain and they tell you that they care about the people in poverty, if they complain and they tell you they care about unions, if they complain and they tell you they care about the working class and they want to raise the minimum wage, but they refuse to talk about ending the Federal Reserve or retying the dollar to the gold and silver certificates and that type of real currency, they are doing you a disservice. They are seeking to harm you, because the more money that is in circulation, the more value is lost from your dollar. That's it. It's that simple. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. But they play in your face on the state level. Again, this is policies. This is policy. They play in your face talking about, oh, it's good for you. But then what does that do? It does two things, and I'll tell you what it does. One, it encourages big businesses that can't afford to automatize. Is that even how you say that word? No, that's like referring to monies and stuff like that. Automation, increase automation. Automatize should be able to be used for that. But anyway, increase automation, stuff like that. For big corporations that can afford it, they do that, which then costs jobs, which then means now those people don't have any jobs, because you raise minimum wage. But it also means that if you raise minimum wage and you hear these people say it, these crazy Bernie Sanders, these crazy AOC people, these crazy greenie people, these crazy socialist people, they'll say it out of their mouth. Well, if your business can't afford to pay them more, you shouldn't have a business. I don't, who child? let's talk about that for a second. The less companies that you have producing a good or a service, generally the higher cost of that good or service. Okay? The less people that you have working, generally the less people that are able to afford a good or service. So if you make it so that businesses that are hiring people, that are employing people, can no longer operate, now those people do not have any money and they can't find other jobs because they don't have the skills or the technical experience, or because the bigger companies that are still around are automating, so now they can't even get a job there anyway, even if they wanted to, which then therefore puts them on social services. When they get on social services, now everybody knows about social services, especially in New York. It's not really anything to live off of, and it's definitely not anything to help you uplift yourself. All it does is it keeps you right where you are and really sets you back from being able to actually be upwardly mobile, and makes it difficult to get off of social services. These are facts. It's not like something I'm pulling out of my anus. These are real things on a daily basis that people experience. Ask somebody. Ask somebody that has kids, that's on social services, that's trying to get a job, that gets a job. I used to employ a lot of people who were entry-level workers, and I run into this all the time. They're on social services, but they have kids, but they start the job, but then they don't, they stop working after a couple of weeks, because it gets back to their case manager or whatever, that now that they're working, so they cut their ability to have child care. So when they cut their ability to have child care, then they can't work, because they're making more money if they're on social services than if they were actually working. So now that hurts the business, because now the business has paid that money into them, into investing and training them and stuff like that, when it could have been spent on other stuff or on different focused and direction. But also, that's tax money. That's your tax money. That could be used to fix roads, if they actually gave a daggone about the roads, which don't even get me started on infrastructure policy. We talked about it briefly. But again, the social services, it's a drain on your taxes. And then nothing ever gets done. But again, the people don't get off of social services because they can't get off of social services. And now they want to expand social services so illegal aliens get social services. I was reading something the other day where there's this Spanish language broadcast in San Diego where they're telling illegal aliens how to go back through the border again and get another I guess they get $2,200 when they come in through the border. Okay. And they said, yeah, you can just go do it like 4 times a month, and that'll give you like $8,000 a month that you can make by just doing that. Are you serious? For real? Are you for real? This is insane, right? Or places like California that just made it so 700,000 illegal aliens are able to get health insurance. So that for me is a very, 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 very concerning thing. You think, how much does health insurance actually cost? How much do you think health insurance costs per person? You know, on average, it costs about $10,000 a year. You know, $8,000 to $10,000. You know, $25,000 for a family, roughly, something like that. So when you look at those numbers, let's just say it's $10,000 per person to keep the numbers even. Okay, 10,000. I'm gonna do this with the calculator just to make sure that I get it right, because I don't want to give any wrong information. 10,000, okay, times 700,000. So now you're looking at, let's see, 10,000 times 700,000. That's 1, 2, wow. So that is $7 trillion. $7 trillion. $7 trillion. That can't be right. $7 trillion California is going to have to pay for these 700,000 illegal aliens for health insurance. Just health insurance. Yeah, I did that math right. I did that math right. I did it right. I did it right. And I'm checking again and again because I'm like, shouldn't it just be millions? No, billions. It's $7 billion. It's going to cost them. I think I said $7 trillion. I meant $7 billion. $7 billion to give all of those illegal aliens um, health care. But they're doing the same thing in New York State, but they're also allowing them to collect social services here. We've got these illegal aliens downtown right now in Rochester, New York. We're paying for their clothing, we're paying for their schooling, we're paying for them to be fed, we're putting money in their pockets. And you're like, well, Marcus, but it's not that much. I understand that it's not that much, but I can go out my door right now. I'll see 5 homeless people. 5 homeless people. I was just outside a couple minutes ago. There was a guy out there, homeless, begging for money. Okay? Begging for money. I look down the block. It's another guy. Okay? Looks like he done got ran over by a train or something. Okay? Homeless looking, ran over by a train, dragged through the mud. Just nasty. Okay? Look at all these homeless people. What are we doing about that? What about all of the housing insecure people like the Democrats like tell me that they're so concerned about? What about all of those people? Shouldn't they be taken care of first? Shouldn't we actually be addressing these issues with these people instead of focusing on other stuff that's not actually our citizens? If you're watching this right now, I encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you do. And if you want to donate to help me continue these broadcasts and the other broadcasts that I do or the work that I do in the community, I encourage you to go to givesendgo.com/MCW and put in a little donation. Or if you have Cash App, you can go $MW real number one. That's MW real number one, digit one. And you can donate there. But this is out of control. It's absolutely out of control. The prioritization is out of control. And the policies are out of control. So now, let's use the rest of this time to talk about solutions and how we can move forward. Because that's really what we need to do. We need to move forward. Because where we're at is not a good place as a nation. Where we're at is not a good place as a state. And I could spend another probably hour talking about bad policy points. But I think that we tied up a good amount of them. Okay. Poor energy policy, poor education policy. Don't even get that. Like that's a whole much larger conversation. In Rochester, in the city school district, we have the #1 most financed school district in the nation with the lowest proficiency scores and some of the lowest graduation rates in the whole country. They've even gotten rid of letter grades in most of the schools. They're shutting down schools and they're firing teachers, but they are getting more money now than ever. Somebody make it make sense to me. They also have less students now more than ever. So somebody's got to make that make sense. The policy just isn't adding up. So, education, energy, bad policies from the Democrats. Okay. Now you say, well, Marcus, well, how can it be the Democrats? First of all, I told you, on the state level, the Democrats have a supermajority. Republicans couldn't do anything if they wanted to. In the city of Rochester, there are no Republicans or anybody else on city council, in city judge position, in school board, or any other city elected official capacity. And there hasn't been for 50 years. So that means that all of the policies that have been put out are all coming from the Democrat policy, and policy matters. So I encourage you all, consider voting Republican this year, because this is outrageous. So like I said, bad energy policy, bad education policy, bad foreign policy, illegal alien policy, okay? And you look at bad public safety policy. Oh, I almost forgot mental health policy, right? You look at now let's talk about the criminal policy, and we'll just go through that real quick. In New York State, we've got the bail reform and the raise the age laws, all that allow and encourage criminal terrorism in our community, because with the lack of actual punishment, it's gone far and beyond actual criminality. It's gone into terrorism. People are terrified to go outside. And I'm not going to belabor the point there, but there are a number of other laws that go around along with that, like the HALT Act and less is more, and there's a couple more as well. But the one thing that you don't see, and this is getting into the solutions, right? And this I encourage all Republicans. So right here, if you are a conservative, a Republican, or a traditionalist, this is for you. These are the solutions, that we need to do. Okay? We need to change the policies that we are focusing on. Okay? We have a very serious issue in New York State and across the nation in many parts, where the Democrats are carrying our water, telling people what we are about and what we stand for. And we need to change that thought process, especially in states that are deep blue, like New York or California. People will argue, oh, well, it's not really deep blue. It's only certain spots that are urban areas. I'm not trying to hear that. You know what I mean. So these are the messaging points that we need to work on. In these very blue places, we have very serious issues with crime. But none of the Democrats want to talk about comprehensive criminal justice reform as far as the prisons go. Where is the comprehensive prison reform? How come nobody will talk about prison reform? Nobody will talk about prison reform. This is the thing that the Republicans need to grasp onto: comprehensive prison reform. We should be talking about that. As Republicans and conservatives, our whole concept is we want people to be productive individuals in society. We want them to get jobs. We want them to be able to produce for themselves. We don't want them to be a drain on society. We want them to be able to live without having to depend on the government. So why aren't we allowing them every resource to do so? And that's why we need to focus on comprehensive prison reform. That needs to be a very core tenet of everything that we push out as Republicans and conservatives this year. Comprehensive prison reform. What's wrong with that? They call these places, what do they call them? Rehabilitation centers, or they call them correctional facilities. They're not rehabilitating or correcting anything. They're not. People are going in there, correctional facilities, to learn to be better criminals. That's not correcting any behavior. Okay? Then when they're let out, they go back to the same low rent, low crime, high crime neighborhoods where they can't really get any job and don't really have any way forward. And they're put in these halfway houses that are one step away from being a drunk den, and many of them are actually run by the criminal element. Are we being serious and real with ourselves? As Republicans, we should be grabbing a hold of that, because we see that we know that it's an issue, and we should be taking that bull by the horns. And we should ride that bad boy all the way home. That's us right there. That's all us right there. Boom. It's simple. Okay? Where are the programs in the prisons to make these people be able to be productive members outside? When I hear people that tell the stories of prison and stuff like that and what they've gone through, a lot of the programs that they'd like to get into are all filled up. There's not enough resources for them to get it, or there's not enough transitional stuff for them as they transition from being in prison to being released from incarceration. And that's a very serious issue. If you're inside and you're able to get a degree inside while you're in prison, you should be able to be matriculated out into a job straight out of prison in the field that you just got that degree in. If you are working in prison, because many of the prisoners work in prison, okay, if you are working to do a certain job in prison, they should be connecting you with a job outside of prison. That's just like that. When you get out, so you can have not only have some money in your pocket, but also work that job when you get out. Automatically transition into it. These are not complicated things. I'm not trying to recreate the universe here. This is very simple, easy, direct talking points that anybody can get on board with. Drink water. Say hi to it. But these are easy things that anybody can get on board with. Very simple solution. Then we've got, education. And it's so bad it makes you want to spit. Education, we need to be on top of education. So what is the messaging that Republicans and conservatives should be delivering for education this year? It's very simple. The education system that we have is antiquated. It was created during the Industrial Revolution to teach children how to actually work in factories. It's never really been taught or created for anything more than that, except to limit their ability of reasoning and thinking. And we see studies that have been done by Harvard and Cornell University on these matters where kids go into school and they're registering at genius level intellects, and then by the time that they're in middle school, 80% of them are no longer registering as genius level. By the time they get out of high school, barely anybody. So we know that something bad is happening in schools as far as intellect goes there, because it's the way that they're training. It's all about training. And what we need to do is we need to take high school and we need to take middle school, and we need to condense them together, because if you went to high school and middle school, you know they're pretty much just about the same thing. We need to be using the high school period to get them either involved with on-the-job training or job experience, or setting them up to move them forward into higher educational fields. Okay, again, with that type of training, okay, that they need, because many of you guys know, many of you guys watching might even have a degree, right? And when you just get out of college, you got your nice degree, and they're like, oh, well, you need 5 years of experience. Well, you're like, but this is an entry-level job. How am I going to get the 5 years of experience to get the job if I was in school the whole time and now I can't have the job without having the experience? So this is again something that we need to plan for ahead of time. And we also need to refocus our whole educational system, because we take it too slow as far as education. We are told that the younger you are, the faster you learn. So why aren't we taking advantage of that? So if the younger you are, the faster you learn, why are we not allowing the children to be able to learn faster? We should do that. We should offer that as an option. But in America right now, unfortunately, we are coddling children. We've got this mentality where a kid should be a kid. But let's be honest. A child is a small human, okay? They are not a kid. A kid is a baby goat. And I don't know about you, but I don't take baby goats as being the most intelligent of all of the creatures that walk on the earth. That's just me. And we need to treat them like the people that they are. We can do this. We can solve the issues with education. All we have to do is incorporate on-the-job training and I don't even know if I can call it advanced educational opportunities, right? Because really it's rudimental educational opportunities that have been being delayed from the youth. Because they'll tell you, oh, well, they can't do that or they can't do this. It all comes from the mentality of the late 80s where, oh, everybody's a winner or everybody's their own special snowflake. We have to move away from that in the educational field, because it's not doing any service. That's why you have all of these children running around out here acting all lawless and crazy. So you've got a couple different classifications of them. You got the thugs, okay, that are just out there acting all gutterishly. Okay, then you got the crazy Antifa, socialist, leftist, Marxist people that are out there just seeking any opportunity that they can to destroy some stuff and express their anger because the world is so against them, because they were told that they're so special as their own individual and that they could be whatever they wanted, and now they've grown up and now they've figured out that that wasn't true and they've always been lied to. Okay, these are very serious things. And you got the third group, which is just so depressed with life because they don't see any other way forward. They've been told that the world is falling to pieces, that they shouldn't worry about having kids because the climate change is going to kill them, because the economy is going to kill them, because the food is going to kill them, because the internet is going to kill them, because everything is going to kill them. Everything is a death sentence. So this is what is being pounded into the head of our youth over and over and over again. And then people wonder, well, why? Why aren't they able to do more, to achieve more? Because they've been set up for failure. Now, and that's education in a nutshell. Another big thing in states that are deep blue, like New York and California, is reparations. Okay? And you say, well, Marcus, nobody should get reparations. Hold on. Now, for me, I'm not very big on reparations myself. Okay. And that's a whole lot, much longer conversation, but I'm just here putting forth the solutions today of messaging for Republicans and conservatives. So, there was, matter of fact, Rob Ortt, our senator minority leader for New York State, the other day said, oh, well, they put together this task force for reparations, and all of the ideas that they're going to come up are going to be untenable and useless. I know that. He knows that. So why aren't we promoting ideas as far as reparations go that actually might be tenable, that are actually reasonable? Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. New York State is a super majority Democrat, so they're going to do whatever they want, whatever they feel like anyway. So the only thing that we can do is moderate messaging and actually use the messaging that we can put out to moderate what they are doing. So if they're going to talk about reparations and create all of these millions and millions of dollars of panels and task force and this and that, wasting your money. Okay, wasting your money. Okay, we should be coming up with real solutions to make it so that reparations are actually something tenable and achievable that aren't going to cost $1 billion in tax money. Why aren't we having that conversation? Republicans were the first people to encourage reparations right around the Civil War. Republicans. And then the Reconstruction hit, and the Democrats redid everything that the Republicans had gained for black people and completely erased it. The Democrats erased 100 years of advancement for black people overnight. Because of what the Democrats did in the Reconstruction, I encourage you to go get some books on what happened in the Reconstruction. Go read some stuff online. Go do some research. Watch some documentaries. Watch some videos on the American Reconstruction and see what actually happened. What happened was they made it so that, I'll give you a great example. We had senators and we had people in the House of Representatives, blacks, more blacks in the House of Representatives and the senators in Congress than we do right now. Than we do right now today with all these Democrats who say that they care about black people so much. But those black people were all Republicans. But we can't talk about that either. We can't talk about how black people have traditionally been Republicans because of our conservative values, many ties directly to church and traditionalism and stuff like that black people have. And the Democrats don't want Republicans to talk about that. They don't want black people to know that they've traditionally been Republican. They don't want black people to know that their traditional values and family values all align more so with the Republican principles than they do with the Democrat principles. They don't want you to talk about that. They don't want you to talk about the Reconstruction and how the Democrats destroyed black society through that, and subsequently after that with Jim Crow laws and stuff like that, all done by the Democrats. They don't want to talk about how the Voting Rights Act was instituted because of Democrat policy of making it so that the Republicans, the black Republicans, were disenfranchised and could not vote. Okay? It's crazy, but we can't have that conversation. So when it comes to reparations, we need to be having a real conversation as Republicans, as conservatives, of how we can actually promote it to be implemented in a way in which is reasonable, feasible, and doesn't cost a lot of taxpayer money and doesn't make a whole bunch of people get agitated. Right? So here's a solution on that. And I've given this to my current state legislator, who is Damon Meeks, because he's all way left and I believe in reparations and da 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 da. So, well, I got a real solution that actually would work and benefit black people. Here it is. You should take it back to your caucus. You think he did that? Absolutely not. So I try to explain this to the Republicans. This is our chance. So here's my solution. 1, tax-free for 13 generations. Okay? So America has a history of doing tax-free stuff for different people in the country, and we have the American Indians as a great example of that, which is a whole separate conversation of how the majority of black Americans are actually American Indian, and the American Indian tribes up and down the East Coast were all forced to register as Negroes. but that's a much larger conversation. We don't have enough time to cover that today. Okay, so we need to be able to do that. That's part one of it. It's part two of this solution for reparations is to reopen the Homesteading Act. Okay, reopen the Homesteading Act and allow Black people who were systematically disenfranchised from being allowed to actually access the Homesteading Act, which you can actually look up. Like, people like, oh, equitability, oh, the government's mean, oh, they treat Black people so bad. No, this is a real thing. This is a real thing. Again, goes back to the Democrats. Black people were disallowed, by and large, to access the Homesteading Act, which allowed people to go out and claim government, federal government land. Okay, but the state also has a lot of land that we can get in New York State that's not being used, that people can use to live on. Okay, and again, that doesn't take any money out of the taxpayer's pocket. Okay, no money comes out of the taxpayer pocket. Okay, you look at, and the other part of that is the tax-free for 13 generations part. Again, no money is coming out of anybody's pocket. Okay, this allows reparations to be implemented in a way in which people, one, we don't have to increase inflation crazy terrible, okay, because this won't really impact inflation at all. Okay, and it's not taking away money directly from someone else. And these are real serious solutions that we can talk about. It's twofold, just right there. Reopen the Homesteading Act in New York State for Black people, okay, and let them have access to state land and homestead, because plus also, how many Black people are going to want to go out and build a house in the woods? Okay, being that most Black people are conservative and traditionalists and stuff like that, and really have Republican values, maybe more than we think, right? Because that's where all of us are trying to go right now. We're trying to get off the grid and away from the governments, and be able to do for ourselves, But the point is there that it's a real serious opportunity for us as Republicans and conservatives to get a hold of this messaging and wrangle it for ourselves. And we can do it. So, reopen the Homesteading Act, 13 generations tax-free. Bing, bang, boom, we can sign the legislation tomorrow. Everything's done. Now, the only real issue that would have to be ferreted out is Black Americans, because anybody that's not a Black American should not be able to get it. None of these Caribbean Islander people, none of these African people, okay, they are not American, okay, and you know what I mean. They're not of America, right? They're from foreign lands, okay? Their family lineage doesn't go back to pre-Columbian times in America. Their family lineage doesn't go back to pre-slavery times in America. Their family lineage does not go back to slavery time in America. Okay? So they should not be able to get it. And now I see all of these Caribbean people and African people like, oh, we should get reparations too. Y'all ain't from here. Y'all ain't from here. And this goes into another separate conversation, which we need to talk about, but I'm not going to belabor the horse, beat the dead horse, where they had this joke about replacement theory, which came from these Democrats, right? The Democrats came up with this whole concept. I had never heard about this concept before the Democrats started to talk about it, like, oh, Republicans are saying that they're being replaced. White Republicans are saying that they're being replaced. I'd never heard that. But then all of a sudden, Democrats started saying replacement theory. They made that theory up themselves. They made that up. But it's a real thing, so they made it up so they can actually talk about it like it's not a real thing, to try to discount that is what's happening. And I'm going to say this in the nicest and gentlest way, and I need you to take this as exactly what it is. You might have family that's like, I'm Italian. I'm Irish, I'm Polish. Okay? That's not American white. It's not. Those aren't the American settlers. Those aren't the pre-American white people. Those aren't the American people after the colonies. It's not the same people. The American white largely has been replaced. The only real Americans we have left are the black Americans. Unfortunately, the American white, and this was something that is much more worth a longer conversation. Um, but the American white has largely been replaced by literally everybody else because they co-opted the concept of what white is into being like Italians used to be Italians, Irish used to be Irish. Now everybody's white. Now everybody's white, but that isn't how it used to be. And they'll say, oh, well, the Italians were treated bad when they got here by the white people that were here. The Irish were treated bad here when they got here by the white people that were here. Yeah, those are white Americans. Those are white Americans who largely have been bred out. I'm sure there's still a couple in the hills of Kentucky, okay, or in the backwoods of West Virginia. But they've largely been bred out, okay? And with the co-option of the concept of white as a ethnic identity, it's been erased. And that's a real thing. So all that's left is really black Americans that are still actual Americans. It's a very serious and hard conversation that we as Americans all need to have because American culture and American history is being erased. But people don't want to talk about that because everybody's got these feelings and gets offended and all of these things, and they get all frumpy when you start talking because they're but it's a real conversation that we need to have. And we must preserve our American values. We must preserve our American culture. We see that they're trying to tear down our history. We see they're tearing down all these Civil War monuments. We see that in New York State, they've gotten rid of all of the American Indian tribes that were used as mascots, basically erasing them from history and stuff like that. This is terrible what's going on and what's being done here in America. We see now all of these illegal aliens flooding into our country that don't share our values, that don't want to assimilate into our country, that are coming here waving their own flags and stuff like that, and screaming about their country and what they are. And then you got the Muslim people coming over here talking about we're taking over everything, we're going to make this a Muslim nation and this, that, and the third. And you're like, well, Marcus, I haven't heard about that. Look at what's happening in Britain. Look at what's happening in France. We had the vision of what's happening right there. Look at what they did the other day in Manhattan, not Manhattan Square. Yeah, Manhattan Square. Okay, what do you call it? Times Square. Okay, it was a whole bunch of them out there praying, all out there, Muslims out there praying, talking about, oh, we're taking over America, da 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 da, bum 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 bum. Islamists, all of them, trying to erase Christianity largely, and Christians need to stand up, which is a whole nother separate part of the fight, which we really need to have these conversations about. Okay, but back to the solutions, right? The prioritization is something else that Republicans need to get on messaging. It's not just that we care about the working class and we care about those that are struggling. It's that we prioritize you because you are important. Democrats don't say that. They don't care about you as an individual. They say the collective whole. They're all collectivists. They're all socialists. They're all big government yahoos. And I heard somebody the other day say, oh, well, all Republicans want is big government. I said, I don't know one Republican that wants big government. I said, maybe some of the ones that are that are the elites that are left over that most Republicans and conservatives that are grassroots are trying to topple and replace. I said, but the majority of actual registrants don't want bigger government that are Republican or conservative. So this is a real opportunity that we have to tell people that we care about them as individuals. That's messaging. That's the messaging that we need to adopt. We need to adopt that messaging. We need to adopt messaging about reparations, like we just talked about, okay? 13 generations tax-free, reopen the Homestead Act on New York State property. That's what we need. That's what we need to do. New York State state-owned property, okay? That's what we need to do. We need to talk about comprehensive prison reform, okay? That's what we need to do. We need to talk about comprehensive education reform and actual implementation of school to work pipeline instead of a school to prison pipeline like we have right now. These are real things that we can talk about right now that are already talking points. And the last one that I want to go over before we get out of here for today is women's health as a talking point. Women's health, women's health, women's health is so big, especially in New York, right? Well, I'm Black, as you can see, we talked about, and we have an extremely high infant mortality rate in the Black community in the United States. We have the highest infant mortality rate out of pretty much every country in the world, honestly, for Blacks, which is insane, right? Like every other developed nation, and even a lot of undeveloped nations. Don't get me started. But we need to be working on this messaging because, again, the Democrats are carrying water. The Democrats are like, kill your babies, but also let's do something about maternal health, but also don't have kids at all. And you're just like, what? So we as Republicans, we as conservatives, we as traditionalists, we as people who care about the family need to put out that messaging that we care about the family. We are pro-family, okay? And we care about women's reproductive health. We care about them being able to deliver their children. We care about the resources for them to be able to take care of their children afterward, like the various different opportunities that they have for all of these clothing places that give away free clothing and free baby stuff to help them out, help struggling parents out and stuff like that. But we care about those things. We care about programs to help parents when it comes to better parenting and parenting techniques or stuff like that. You know, again, these things should be driven by outreach from different things like churches and so forth like that, you know, not the actual government, but we should be having these things as talking points. We care about the women who feel like they're being pressured into getting abortions. We don't want them to feel that they have to be pressured into abortions, that we can see a clear path forward for them to be able to take care of their children. And we can tie it back into everything else that we just talked about. Economic policy, education policy, comprehensive prison reform, and all of that. We can tie all of that together because we are a pro-individual, we are a pro-family people. We, as Republicans, need to get this type of messaging out, that we care about you as an individual, not a collective whole. You yourself, you are important. And that's a message that I always try to drive home because I know how much people need to hear that message. I know. You are important. You are important, at least to me. I don't give a flying monkey's uncle about everybody else. Everybody else might think that you're not important. You're important to me. Period. Point blank. Okay? And I want our society to be able to thrive. I want us to be able to move forward and continue in a more positive way. But if we as Republicans and conservatives and traditionalists do not come together and adjust our messaging in states like New York State, that's a deep blue state, where we're getting hammered on abortion. How can we get hammered on abortion when it's already codified into law that it was never going to change? They're like, oh, well, they're talking about it on the federal level. You never get that on a federal level. You never get that change on a federal level, and it doesn't matter because it's not changing on a state level. So you can't change it on a state level. It would never happen. The Democrats have a supermajority. Never would happen. It's not even physically possible. But they butchered us with that messaging. And they said that Republicans were trying to get rid of their abortions, which was never the case, never true. But they hammered us on that. And they won all these elections. Now we've got the reparations things are coming up. Now we need to be on top of this. We don't need to be falling behind. We need to be taking that, women's health. We need to take the schooling and education. We need to take comprehensive prison reform, and we need to run with it this year. Those are the winning key talking points. Okay? Those are the key talking points. That's where we need to re-guide our whole message. And that should be, forget just this year, that should be our whole thing as a party, cohesively, all together, period. Period. That's all our values right there. That's it. And those are my solutions to a lot of what we're going through. And you got it. I appreciate you guys listening. If you want to donate, if you got Cash App, MW Real #1, that's $MW Real #1 on Cash App, or you can go to givesendgo.com/MCW and you can donate there if you want to help me continue doing these type of shows and these type of conversations and the activities that I do out in the world to help encourage and uplift people as well. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you for listening to The Divide, and check out a new episode of Let's Talk later in the week. I'll catch you later. Be blessed, be well, stand up, speak up, and don't shut up. Take action.